Hey guys, I had a really cool experience up in Salem, Massachusetts that I wanted to share, and I have been told by a very beautiful friend of mine to show the world who I am at all times, not just from the safety of my spiritual room or when I'm ready to do a blog, just to come on and share who I am and where I am. So in a couple other videos, I've been talking about some of the spiritual work that I have been called to do in the last year after the trip to Ireland, which connected me into Earth in a new way. I was connected into the wounds in the history of a place in order to help release it, to help take portals back, to remove the negative energies that the 3D world has put onto it, the really subjugation of the spiritual world. So I was up in the Boston area and decided to go to Salem, Massachusetts, because that Crucible book was always one that had meant a lot to me. The history of Crucible was one that I had always been really attracted to, and I've read the book dozens of times. So my whole life I've been telling myself, when you feel connected to a place, you feel connected to a place. It's possible I had a life there. So of all the places that I wanted to go and take this new connection to Earth, Salem was a big one for me. So I went up there yesterday, and you can tell by the pause that it was a very unique experience in the fact that I felt no connection to Salem. The roots of Salem, Massachusetts, as far as the spiritual world, felt really young. I had no personal connection to the place, and it was very clear just as I was driving around trying to figure out where to go to tap into the energy, that the roots and the connection I felt to the place was more to the story of persecution. It was to the story of the witch trials, which had taken place all over the world, not just in that type of modern day witch trials, but the hundreds and thousands or thousands of years of persecution against spirituality, from the Romans, from the Christians. So when I parked, I say landed, I was walking around and it felt very tourist trappy. And I mean no disrespect at all to Salem or the residents there. But as I was walking around and called to this church that's towards the center, I connected into the church thinking that it would be very similar to the churches that I feel here in DC, which is parasitic. They tap into the ley lines. Certainly the Masonic temples and the Mormon temples out here, Scientology does that as well. Pretty much all of 16th Street in DC is just one giant parasite. So tapping into the earth of this cathedral, I could see a cone of light connecting down into the core of Gaia. And at first I thought it was a similar thing, that they were siphoning off of her core. The fact that the light went all the way down to her core, though, was unique. So instead of trying to sever it or interrupt it, I just kind of tuned in deeper. And I could feel that this cone of light was something that light workers had connected. That there had already been groups, dozens of groups of people that were going to that land and disconnecting the dogma of Catholicism that had colored the land, that had really led to the history that many of us know about that particular area. So widening the scope of my connection, I realized that was what I was feeling at Salem. It did not need my work in the way that I had felt in the Mound of Hostages in Ireland or on the USS Constitution. It felt like the work was already well in hand and that the land had already been reclaimed. I didn't feel any particular pulls to anything. So I just added my love and light to the work that was already being done there, and went to one particular store where I found a garnet that has become very important to me on my journeys. And I was originally seeing an image of me leaving a garnet in the cemetery, but as I went into the old cemetery that's by the Pickman House, I believe is the name of the area, right down by the Witch Village. Immediately when you enter the cemetery, someone tells you to stay on the path. And for anybody connected to the earth, that always feels very constraining. And I totally understand the reason for remaining on the path. They want to protect these stones that are very brittle. But the path that has been carved into the land is not the path that calls to you when you're doing spiritual work. So a lot of the areas that I originally thought I was going to be called to, I just couldn't reach. And no longer felt connected to after seeing how much work had already been done in this place. See lovely Sadie, we were out here taking a walk. And she likes some screen time. So walking around the cemetery, I did feel a couple spirits that were still in the area. I had 2 young girls. Nothing nefarious, nothing evil, just some energy that was just trapped there. And so I worked on calling in just teams of angels to help spirits move on, whatever spirits were ready to move on, to be shown the way to leave the earthly plane. And in the back left corner, as you enter the cemetery, your back left corner, there's a far gravestone back there. And if it wasn't for how busy it was, I definitely would have stepped off the path and gone over there, because I could feel a male spirit back there. Not attached to the gravestone, but attached to the location. And as I tapped into it and looked at it, I felt fairy. I felt the fae. I felt the same energy that I felt in Ireland for so long. That those deep, deep roots, it was like a little pocket of fairy back there. So just noting that and continuing on my walk, I came across this tree that had puzzle piece branches. Like they made hard 90-degree turns, and they just had these wonderful corking spirals that went up into the sky. And as you looked up, it looked like it had a perm, like hard geometric perm. And I could not help myself. I had to step off the path to touch this tree. And it had a beautiful seam that ran down the inside of it. And it was a natural seam. It was parallel to the, they had like a string of lights that was going up to it. But I just ran my hand down the string, the seam, and I could feel that it opened a portal, a beautiful fae portal that was inside of this cemetery. And I could already feel that the cemetery itself was being, it was surrounded and guarded by some really powerful earth energy. Some of the trees out there were there to help to help transmute a lot of the darker energies that can be attached to the spirit world. So that fae portal and the little fae home pocket in the back corner of the cemetery were really the big takeaways there. I was walking around after touching the portal. I was like, okay, I'm ready to leave the cemetery. I could feel that my time there was done. So a really interesting experience to come to a place that I'd always felt called, and then tapping into the energy and realizing that my perception of what and why I was meant to be there was wrong. It just wasn't accurate. It was still, it's always an important thing to go to the places you feel connected to. But when you tap into spirit and you have an open heart and really manage your expectations. You know, I went in with some expectations, and I shouldn't have. I should have gone with absolutely no expectations for what I was going to experience, because it was different. And that in itself was beautiful. It opened my eyes to the way a spiritual mission could be different than what I perceived it to be. I expected this deep, dark energy of crimes and persecution, and I didn't feel that. So the light had already reclaimed that place. And the Wiccan community, which is incredibly strong there, plays in that fairy energy. And and I, even now, as I'm saying, I hear Spirit saying the reason that Fae is able to come back into that land is because it was reclaimed for the light. they're able to show themselves in that realm again, which is absolutely beautiful. So what a cool experience. I will continue to share more videos as I tap into spirit, and videos out as I'm experiencing them, because that is when they are the most important. So thank you, Katie, for your wonderful advice to do that, to just show who I am in the garden with no makeup on, just putzing around. So love and light, my light warriors. Continue to hold your light, continue to hold your strength, and know that you are seen, that you are heard, and that you are loved.